National War Veteran or Mujahid Day, commemorating the double anniversary of the attacks of the Northern Constantine and the holding of the Somam Congress. Algeria has called for investigating into all kinds of violence against men and women in war-torn zones and countries while holding perpetrators accountable for their criminal deeds. And the spokesperson for the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights has stressed the urgent need to lift the blockade on the Gaza Strip, denouncing the genocidal policy of the Zionist occupation, which has caused a catastrophic humanitarian crisis in the Palestinian enclave. And those were the major developments. Now the Full News edition. I'm Asya Bukar. Good afternoon. The President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, has recorded the honorable battles waged by Algerian war veterans against the then French colonization, highlighting their heroic ability to inflict heavy and painful losses on the colonial army. This came on the occasion of the National War Veteran or Mujahid Day, commemorating the double anniversary of the attacks of Northern Constantine and the holding of the Somam Congress. President Tebboune hailed the war veterans' determination to defeat the colonization's heavily armed forces by taking the initiative to impose the arena and timing of the military confrontation on the enemy, which led to the widening resonance of the November 1st, 1940 or 54 revolution. He also the Algerian people are also commemorating the 69th anniversary of the Somam Congress, and the president said at that stage the leaders of the revolution decided to meet in Ifriuzlagen to support the revolution, which with coordination mechanisms, frameworks and organizational structures capable of achieving the revolution's goals. The Speaker of the Council of the Nation, Azouz Nasri, has said that National Mujahid Day, commemorating the double anniversary of the North Constantine Offensive and the Somam Congress, is a tribute to the ingenuity and sacrifices of the martyrs and freedom fighters for the homeland. In a message posted on his personal social media account on the occasion of the celebration of this double anniversary, Azouz Nasri said that on this day, Algeria commemorates National Mujahid Day, marked by the double anniversary, a tribute to the ingenuity and sacrifices of the martyrs and war veterans. In the same line, the Speaker of the National People's Assembly, Ibrahim Boughali, has stated that the events of August 20th are not just a historic memory, but a national heritage that inspires future generations to continue building state institutions and consolidating Algeria's position at regional and international levels. The Minister of State, Minister of Energy, Mines and Renewable Energies, Mohamed Arkab, has received the Secretary General of the Gas Exporting Countries Forum, Mohamed Hamel, with whom he discussed developments in global gas markets and Algeria's contribution to strengthening the forum's presence on the international stage. And Masoud Sharfi has the details.
At the start of the meeting, which was attended by ministry officials, Mohamed Hamel offered, on behalf of the forum and on his own behalf, his sincere condolences to Algeria, its leader, government and people following the bus crash in Wad al-Harrash, expressing his full solidarity with the families of the victims and his wishes for a speedy recovery to the injured. The meeting was an opportunity to review Algeria's contribution to the GCF's activities, strengthen the forum's presence on the international stage, and highlight the importance of the organization's central role in coordinating efforts between member countries and responding to the challenges facing the natural gas sector in the context of accelerated global energy changes. For his part, the GECF Secretary General welcomed the level of cooperation established with Algeria, praising its constant contribution to promoting the GECF's actions and strengthening its presence as a platform for coordination and consultation between gas exporting states.
And the CEO of the Sonatrach Group, Rashid Hashishi, has also received the Secretary General of the Gas Exporting Countries Forum, with whom he discussed ways of strengthening cooperation between the two parties. During the meeting, the two parties examined ways to strengthen cooperation and broaden the prospects for partnership in line with the current challenges facing the energy sector at the regional and international levels. And the Arab Parliamentary Union has affirmed that the celebration of World Humanitarian Palestine Day comes in a particularly dramatic context marked by the suffering of the Palestinian people under the Zionist aggression amid the indifference of the international community. Mr. Chorfi again.
In a communique, the Speaker of the People's National Assembly, Brahim Boughali, reaffirmed the Arab Interparliamentary Union commitment to the fundamental principles of humanitarian action, namely humanity, neutrality, independence, and impartiality, praising the great efforts made by humanitarian workers, particularly those who risk their lives to save others and alleviate their suffering. This World Day comes as the humanitarian catastrophe continues in the Gaza Strip due to barbaric Zionist practices and blatant violations of international humanitarian law, including the targeting of humanitarian workers and the obstruction of humanitarian aid. The Union denounced the international silence over crimes against rescue teams in Gaza and urged action to end such violations, while reaffirming its solidarity with the humanitarian workers and stressing the need to uphold human rights, justice and dignity. The Arab Interparliamentary Union conducted its statement by commending Arab initiatives in favor of refugees and disaster victims through the world, affirming that humanitarian aid remains an intrinsic part of the Arab states' commitment to peoples affected by disaster and crises.
You're still listening to Radio Algeria International, and Algeria has called for investigating into all kinds of violence against men and women in war-torn zones and countries while holding perpetrators accountable for their criminal deeds. During an open debate on conflict-related sexual violence and under its agenda item on women, peace and security, the representative of Algeria to the UN Security Council spoke about the atrocities and violence endured by Palestinians in occupied territories.
Mr. President, the Secretary General's report is alarming regarding the situation in the Palestinian occupied territories. It confirms the United Nations verified 12 incidents of conflict-related sexual violence perpetrated by Israeli armed and security forces. It also documents 2 cases of rape and 4 incidents of violence to the genitals against Palestinian men perpetrated by Israeli forces. It indicates that the Commission of Inquiry further received credible information on detainees subjected to burns to the anus. Other incidents are detailed in the report. These, as the report itself underlines, are indicative, not comprehensive, given the lack of access to detention facilities and the continuing obstacles to reporting sexual violence due to fear and lack of trust in complaints mechanisms.
She then added that despite all the atrocities it has been committing, the Israeli occupation has not been held accountable for any of them.
Despite these facts, surprisingly, Israel is not listed among parties credibly suspected of committing or being responsible for patterns of sexual violence in conflict. Mr. President, this omission is not only indefensible, but it also dangerously fosters a sense of impunity, conveying the intolerable message that certain perpetrators stand above accountability. Mr. President, we expect it to be corrected in the next report. Israel is already on notice for possible listing. That step must be taken.
The Algerian representative then called for conducting independent investigation into allegations of violence, shedding light on holding perpetrators accountable, as silence will only pave the way for more violence.
Algeria calls for independent investigations into allegations of conflict-related sexual violence, with full cooperation from all parties and effective protection for survivors and witnesses. Concrete accountability measures, including targeted sanctions against perpetrators, to affirm that no one is above international law. The meaningful participation of victims at every level of peace negotiations, ceasefire discussions, and post-conflict recovery. Adequate and sustained resources for programs that protect and empower victims during and after conflict.
The debate centered on the report of the Secretary General of the matter, as well as a concept note on the theme identifying innovative strategies to ensure access to life-saving services and protection to survivors of sexual violence in conflict zones. And now the Palestinian Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Expatriates has called for binding international measures to put an end to the invasion of extremist Zionist settlers in the occupied West Bank. In a statement, the ministry denounced the attacks and crimes committed by Zionist settlers against the Palestinian people, their land and their property in the occupied West Bank, stressing that such actions constituted a violation of all law and continued through the settlers' clashes on Palestinian lands in an attempt to impose control by force of arms and under the protection of the occupation forces. This comes while the death toll in Gaza has risen to 62,122, mostly women and children, with at least 156,758 injured since the start of the Israeli aggression in 2023. Medical sources reported that since the Israeli occupation resumed its assault on March 18, 2025, more than 10,576 civilians have been killed. In the past 24 hours, hospitals in Gaza received 58 bodies and 185 injured, while 22 civilians were killed and 94 wounded. And amid this mounting toll, let's recall that Hamas movement said it received a proposal from mediators in Cairo, discussed it with the factions and its leadership, and submitted its approval backed by the factions. The approved proposal is a framework paper, not a detailed agreement, building on earlier drafts with some modifications. Hamas representative in Algeria, Youssef Hamdan, stressed that the movement is dealing with the negotiation process and ceasefire talks with the utmost responsibility and flexibility despite the occupation's delays and evasions.
الحركة تواصل التعامل بمسؤولية بالغة مع هذا المسار.
The movement continues to deal with this process with great responsibility despite the procrastination of the occupation and its evasion of the obligations of any agreement we seek to reach. For his purpose, the Hamas movement shows the highest degree of flexibility and national and political responsibility, and has strengthened its position with the Palestinian national stance represented by the ongoing state of factional consultation, the most recent of which were the meetings in Cairo. What is required now is to build on the movement's positive position and to approve of the proposal presented by the mediators, as well as the international shifts pressuring the occupation to end the war, prevent return to aggression, and break the unjust and oppressive humanitarian blockade.
كسر الحصار الإنساني الجائر والظالم.
That was Hamas representative to Algeria, Youssef Hamdan. And now the spokesperson for the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights has stressed the urgent need to lift the blockade on the Gaza Strip, denouncing the genocidal policy of the Zionist occupation, which has caused a catastrophic humanitarian crisis in the Palestinian enclave. Said Bouazi.
While the risk of famine is omnipresent, Thamin Al-Khitan underlined that it is the direct result of the Zionist occupation policy of blocking humanitarian aid. According to the Office of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk, obtaining the meager supplies available can be a deadly undertaking in the besieged Palestinian enclave. Between 27th May and 17th August, the office recorded 1,857 martyrs, including 1,021 near the sites of the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, the aid program supported by the Zionist entity in the United States, and 836 others on the roads used by supply trucks. Most of these victims died under fire from the Zionist occupation army, Al-Khitan explained. The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation is being questioned by UN agencies and international NGOs because of its operations, which are supposed to provide aid, but Palestinians are being targeted by the occupying army when they receive food parcels. On the ground, Palestinians who have died as a result of starvation have been recorded, including children. 3 elderly people have also died in the last 24 hours in Gaza, bringing the total to 266 martyrs, including 112 children, due to hunger and malnutrition. Since the beginning of March, no accommodation materials, including tents, tarpaulins, and mattresses, have been allowed to enter, and more than 780,000 new displacements have taken place, while approximately 86% of the Gaza Strip is already subject to evacuation orders or is located in areas militarized by the Zionist occupation.
The spokesperson for the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, Jens Laerke, insisted that the situation is worse than it has ever been in Gaza.
Today's grim statistic is that last year, 2024, a shocking number of aid workers were killed, and we have seen a 31% increase compared to the previous year, 2023, a third more than the year before. Most of those killed were national staff serving in their home communities, and the numbers are driven up by the relentless conflict in Gaza, where more than 180 humanitarian workers were killed last year, and many more if you count from the beginning of the war, and in Sudan, where 60 were killed last year.
That was the spokesperson for the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs. And now the European Trade Union Confederation has called on the European Union's High Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy to suspend the EU-Israeli Partnership Agreement and end trade relations with the Zionist occupation settlements in occupied Palestine. The details with Said Bouazi.
In a letter addressed to Kaja Kalas, reported by the Palestinian news agency Wafa, the Secretary General of the European Trade Union Confederation, Esther Lange, called for immediate sanctions, including the suspension of the association agreement with the Zionist entity, the end of trade relations with Zionist settlements, and the guarantee of full and unhindered access to humanitarian aid for the Palestinian population in the Gaza Strip. Esther Lange demanded more decisive and principled measures against Zionist violations, expressing her deep concern about the worsening humanitarian catastrophe in the Gaza Strip, which has been under a total Zionist blockade for several months and has been subjected to barbaric attacks since October 2023. She also stressed the need for an immediate and permanent ceasefire in the war-torn Palestinian enclave, recalling that the use of starvation as a weapon of war by the Zionist occupation constitutes a war crime, as stipulated in the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court.
You're still listening to Radio Aljazeera International, and several human rights organizations in Argentina have filed a complaint against the head of the Zionist occupation government for his war crimes and crimes against humanity in the Gaza Strip ahead of his visit to the country in September. According to the same sources, the mothers of the founding line of Plaza de Mayo, the Peace and Justice Service, the Association of Families of the Disappeared and Detained for Political Reasons, and the Argentine League for Human Rights have taken legal action to denounce Netanyahu's war crimes and crimes against humanity in the Gaza Strip since October 7, 2023. In a joint statement released to the media, the NGOs underline that the Argentine people are well aware of the meaning of the concepts of war crimes and crimes against humanity, having endured them themselves, noting that for this reason the visit of a criminal is not welcome. Italian Foreign Minister and Deputy Prime Minister has called for a ceasefire and an end to the massacres in the Gaza Strip. In statement to the press, he said that his country opposes the invasion of the Gaza Strip and the occupation of parts of the West Bank by settlements as well as attacks against Christians, stressing that the so-called Netanyahu ignores the demands of half the world in this regard. He explained that his country's objective is the establishment of a Palestinian state and that Italy is ready to send its forces under the auspices of a UN mission led by Arab countries to build a Palestinian state. Meanwhile, the spokesperson for the UN Secretary General Stefan Dujarric has announced that 181 humanitarian workers have lost their lives in the Gaza Strip in 2024, the scene of a brutal Zionist attack. At least, he said, 390 humanitarian workers lost their lives while carrying out their duties around the world in 2024, including 181 in Gaza. You also listen to Radio Algeria International and to Sudan. Now a total of 1,575 new cases of cholera and 22 deaths were recorded during the past week in Sudan. And the ministry specified that the total number of cases has now reached 101,450, including 2,515 deaths spread across the country's 18 regions since the declaration of the epidemic in August 2024. And now at least 358 people have died in violent floods that have hit the province of Khyber in northwestern Pakistan over the last 3 days following torrential rains, according to the Regional Disaster Management Department. Hundreds of people were also injured, 349 homes destroyed, and around 450 buildings damaged. And back to the country now, the public prosecutor at Dar al-Baida court here in Algiers, Rostam Mansouri, has announced the placing in provisional detention of 4 people accused of causing the bus crash into Wad al-Harash. During a press conference held at the court headquarters, the public prosecutor specified that the investigating judge, after hearing the 4 suspects, ordered their placement in provisional detention pending the completion of the judicial investigation. You also listen to Radio Algeria International, and that's it for our news bulletin. I invite you now to listen to a program devoted to National Day of War Veteran or Mujahid, and the program is compiled and presented by Mr. Sharfi.
Welcome to Radio Algeria International. Today we commemorate Mujahid Day, or War Veteran Day, a date engraved in the conscience of every Algerian. On August 20th, we pause to honor the courage and devotion of our Mujahideen, the women and men who fought with unshakable resolve for freedom, dignity and independence. National Mujahid Day unites 2 milestones that shaped the destiny of our nation: the North Constantine Offensive of 1955 and the Sumam Congress of 1956. Together, they embody sacrifice and vision, blood and strategy, the twin pillars upon which Algeria's liberation was built. This day is not only remembrance, it is renewal of our pledge to the martyrs, fidelity to the Mujahideen, and loyalty to the Algeria they gifted us, free, sovereign, and eternal. On August 20th, 1955, the revolution rolled to life in Constantine under the leadership of Zihud Yusuf. The Mujahideen launched a sweeping offensive that shook colonial power to its core. This was not merely a military strike, it was a declaration to the world: Algeria lives and Algeria fights. The offensive galvanized the people. It broke the wall of fear that colonial repression had tried to build. Thousands of new volunteers joined the National Liberation Front, and the international community could no longer ignore the Algerian struggle for independence. But the price was too costly. In retaliation, colonial forces carried out massacres of unimaginable brutality, killing more than 12,000 civilians and burning entire villages. Families were shattered and lives torn apart. Yet from that tragedy rose even greater resolve. The blood of martyrs nourished the roots of resistance, proving that Algeria's freedom could never be extinguished. 1 year later, on August 20th, 1956, the revolution took another decisive step, the Somam Congress. In the valley of Ifri Kabylia, revolutionaries gathered in secrecy, risking everything to give the struggle a unified structure and a national vision. The result was the Somam Platform, a charter that remains one of the brightest pages in Algeria's history. It laid down principles that still inspire us today. Primacy of the political over the military, affirming that the fight was not just about arms, but about building a nation. Primacy of internal leadership over external delegations, ensuring that the revolution remained anchored in the sacrifices of those inside Algeria. Institutional discipline and organization, with the creation of the National Council of the Algerian Revolution, CNRA, and the Committee of Coordination and Execution, CCE, to guide and coordinate the struggle. The Somam Congress turned a scattered uprising into a disciplined liberation war. It gave Algeria not only fighters, but also visionaries, and above all, a project for sovereign, dignified, and united nation.